Amazing Grace says, I once was lost, but now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see. My name is Dr. Bill Payne, the pastor of First Methodist Church in Live Oak. I have a close friend, a young man who was born with a eye congenital problem in which he doesn't see colors and he doesn't have all the stuff in his eyes and he can't really walk outside and see. And so he has to use a walking stick and he's legally blind. And it's really been a life transforming thing for him and his family. Well, um, a few years ago, the person was visiting a doctor, and the doctor said that they had a treatment for his type of blindness and that they could help him so that he could see again and he wouldn't have to, use his walking stick and he'd be able to resume a normal life and do all of those things that anyone else does who is able to see. And that sounds like great news, and everyone expected my friend to be overjoyed about it. Well, my friend was reserved and he went home and he thought about it and he continued to talk to people about it. And surprisingly to me and to everyone else, he said that he didn't want the operation. And they said, well, why don't you want the operation? Well, because it would radically change my life. And I got my life together now. I feel comfortable with my situation. And I don't need all that other stuff to see. I see fine. I'm okay. I'm just okay. It seems counterintuitive to me because I'm able to see everything clearly. And the idea of not being able to drive my car or to do normal things would be a frightening thing, or the ability not to be able to walk outside in the sunlight and see clearly would just really be a problem for me. And so this young man had become so accustomed to not being able to see that the thought of being able to see was frightening to him. This brings me to a scripture. In John 9, Jesus is walking along and he comes to a blind beggar, and his disciples say, Master, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he should be born blind? And we have the unfolding of this story. And Jesus says, neither this man nor his parents. The assumption was blindness was a curse that was caused by sin. And you had to trace the root of that sin. Was it the sin of his parents, his ancestors? Was it his own sin? And did he sin in the womb? Because it was a ethical problem to say that a person was born blind, because you have to say who caused it. Can a baby cause its own blindness by doing something wrong in the womb? It's kind of a ridiculous idea, but that's where the logic led. And so Jesus says, no, neither one. And in this case, the man was born blind so that the glory of God could be revealed in him and through him. As the story goes on, Jesus comes to him and makes a mud with his own saliva and tells him to go. And he goes to the pool of Siloam and he comes back seeing fine. He's able to see everything. And unlike my friend, he's overjoyed that he can see. And they say, well, who healed you? Well, the man called Jesus. I don't know where he is, because Jesus had moved on. And then they take him to the Pharisees, and the Pharisees are perplexed. How can this man do this? Well, some said he can't because he's a sinner. Others said, well, no one has ever done this kind of stuff before. He must be from God. And then they had a consensus. If he would have been from God, he would not have done this on the Sabbath. Keeping the Sabbath is a holy obligation. He made mud with his hands. That's work. He sent the man to wash. That's work. He's rebelling against God's commandments. So he's not a good man, and they come to a conclusion about him. Well, they send for his parents and they have this conversation, and the story moves on. And finally, they have to acknowledge that he really was born blind and that Jesus really did heal them. And then Jesus has the larger conversation. And that leads to this: even though they see, they are blind. And this is what he says. For judgment I have come into the world, so that the blind will see, and that those who think they see will become blind. He's not talking about physical blindness. He's speaking about spiritual blindness. The physical blindness becomes a metaphor to open up this conversation about spiritual blindness. And this is how the story relates to that. These Pharisees who rejected Jesus were able to see in the flesh, but they were blind in their spirit because God had appeared to them and they chose not to see him. They rejected what God was doing. They saw it, but they did not comprehend it. They were blind. And in this case, spiritual blindness is worse than physical blindness because the blind man believed in Jesus and he was healed. He received from God the gift that God wanted to give to him, even though he could not see in the physical, but he did see in the physical, in the spiritual. And so we have this continuing problem today. There are people who love their blindness so much that when God gives them light, revelation, and truth, they reject it. It's easier to live a life of blindness than to see with the Spirit and know the truth of God and then have to readjust your life to that truth. Yes, when you know God's truth, you have to adjust to it. And some people choose darkness rather than light. And spiritual blindness is one of the greatest diseases that we find today in this world. People reject the light of God. Jesus is the light of the world. And many people still remain in darkness. This is a great theme in, in John. Darkness versus the light. Jesus is the light, and they are living in the darkness. And there's a place in which people who are living in the darkness of unbelief and doubt and sin. They come to Jesus, and Jesus brings them into the light, and they're liberated, and they are walking with God. That's the options we have, my friends. Some people say they see, and they think they do because all they have is physical sight, but spiritually they're blind. I hope that you are not spiritually blind and that you will take time to see the truth of God, to comprehend it, and walk in it. May Jesus bless you and keep you. Amen.